Hello guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to follow an interactive tutorial. This is SelfCAD's tutorial page. You can see it's relatively new. You have only 9 tutorials so far posted at the time of this video. The newest tutorial is this sofa. So I would like to show not just the design you will follow tutorial, but basically showing the flow of how you actually follow it so you can teach it, learn it from this. I personally have tested all of these. So far, each of these tutorials are not just a different design, but each one actually teaches a different style of design and what they're you can learn from everyone something different. So let's get started with this. You click on a tutorial, it opens this page and it actually explains you what you're going to learn. You're going to learn 3D sketch, add the details, follow pattern, fill polygon. So basically that means is that this sofa was created mostly using these. Obviously the basic tools like move, rotate, but those are mostly from the advanced tools that was used, and it explains you here the description what will be used. Now this obviously 3D sketch add a detail sofa. That's basically what this is about. So you click on this activate interactive tutorial and this will open a new project. It will automatically create a project for you. Usually you have to manually choose a project, but this will automatically create a project. And it asks you if you want to start this. Said yes. Okay. So let me show you what you have here, the sections that you have. So you have the recorded steps. It tells you the action that you need to do. You need to activate 3D sketch. Now, if you look over here, there's nowhere that it says 3D sketch, but the action details is where it kind of elaborates and explains how you actually do this action. And in this case, it explains you from the drawing category in the toolbar, choose 3D sketch, or you can use the shortcut key. So now I know I have to look for the drawing toolbar over here. Now let's look, before I click on something, I want to look what the details are. So details gives me the action type. What are we trying to accomplish? And this is create a new object. The goal here is to create an object. But similarly to this section to the left side, the bottom line where we have the description is elaborating how we do it, and it tells you what is our goal, how we're going to accomplish. I mean, the goal is create an object, how we're going to do that, and we will start with 3D sketch to start outlining the sofa. So basically we're going to draw a basic outline. That's the goal, what you want to do. So now let's start following, actually doing what we do. You can also notice that everything is grayed out. The only thing is available is over here, except the tutorials icon, where you have these other options for tutorials, and drawing is available over here. So we go to 3D sketch. If you go to 3D sketch now, it tells you what you need to do is you have to set the snap to grid. This parameter found in precision settings. So this, I spoke to the SelfCAD team. They will improve the highlights. It's still a tutorial, still in the working. So some of them are not good highlighted now. I'll show you later in this tutorial. Already tested it. You can already see what will be in the new highlights. But for now, this is basically you found in this setting. You go in precision settings and you go to grid vertices. Eventually this will be highlighted, this stuff as well. Now it's not highlighted. So this automatically moves it along to, we're already at step 3 of 162. They're all still part of the same step of creating an object. It's just that the action changes now. Now it's more detailed. You have to activate the rectangle and it tells you how to choose it, and you can also use hotkeys over here. And this kind of gives you a description as well, but it's still front part. So I'm activating this. And now you can see it gives you a point. You can see if I zoom in, you can see it clearer. This yellow points are what's used for highlights. Once I click on this point, it gives me now the second point that I have to click, and then it gives me a third point that I have to click. So basically I created a rectangle, and then it tells me now I have to do something else. Actually the action has changed. I have to edit a selected object. So I'm going to edit details. You can see actually this is not closing the panel because it will eventually be closed automatically. It just, you don't need that step, it saved the step. But in reality, you can do however you choose to do it. So I click on edit details. A quick note on the edit details. Edit details is like, you can manually go and sketch. There's a lot of different ways you can do almost every object, and not just in SelfCAD and any 3D CAD software. You have different tools and different styles, and some objects are just a matter of choice, and some objects are better one way or another. But that's in SelfCAD, that's something unique to have edit details, which in some cases this can be used in lieu of additional drawings. So we need actually a lot more drawings, but in lieu of just going and entering measurements and finding it, this particular tutorial shows how to use edit details. Now, in real design, I'm designing a lot in SelfCAD. Using edit details is actually much, much faster than drawings. But in tutorials, it may seem a little bit less because every edit detail creates a new step. And you see, just follow, just to give you this heads up. So if I click on the edit details, it highlights what it wants me to move. The idea of edit details, they have, you can add or remove, and you could choose between edge or vertices or vertex, but this basically doesn't tell you to, it's all grayed out. They don't tell you to change anything. It just highlights you, and this you can see it highlights the geometry itself. In this case, it's just lines. And once you click on this line, it shows you where you need to move. You see the yellow line that is created. Now, this is a first step. When you do edit details, you kind of drag it, and then after you finish the movement, you can type in the value. So it was, you see the length was actually entered over here at 62.74, but I'm going to put in 25. This is what the instructions gives me. And once I do that, it tells me to the next step. So I click on the next, and it shows me, oops, you see I almost moved it. So it gave me this alert, not just to click on it. I like double click mistake. So I moved it again. Now it tells me actually I did it now less than I have to do. I have to do it 75, tells me. So I'm going to type into 75 and so on. I'll move on, do the same thing over here and 25. Sorry, you can get the idea already why this is easier than drawing, because I can do a lot just by editing these pieces. And oops, I've typed in 10 and then do over here. So okay, now let's do this. So I'm just following, you see it's repeated steps basically, it's the same thing. And if you know, okay, actually moved it over here. Here just snapped it. Actually, if you see over here, now I think the last one, I didn't pay attention. I just did it like robotically. I think the one snapped without telling me to enter the measurements. But nevertheless, now it tells me to finalize it. Edit details is one of these tools that you need to finalize to make it stick. The drawing was not that. You see it automatically closed. The drawing didn't ask to finalize. Now, if you would like to draw something like this, the drawing tools can do that perfectly fine, but edit details just makes it easier. You simply drag and drop. And this is very good when you want to make some outlines and things, you know, that you want to do. Okay, so I'm going now over here. It tells me to go back to the drawing, and I need to choose, again, the highlights are not perfect yet, but this is the arc 1 that I need to do. And it gives me a point to click, point, and then gives me next point. Then it's going to do the second and jump. You can read the suggestions, what they tell you, but basically it's all, you see when you get these comments, it means it's just repetitive and it's no longer to explain, just repetitive steps. Now I can just exit out. So once I exit this out, it tells me to activate Polygon Selection. So I'm activating this, and this is something very interesting that I want to show you. When it comes to selection, there's a lot of ways to select, especially when you go to this advanced settings selection that I'll show you later. SelfCAD allows you kind of, it's difficult sometimes with these tutorials to follow exactly what you have used, because you may have like loop selection, different things. And there's also a way to use over here marquee selection or just drag and drop marquee selection. So SelfCAD will allow you to use any type of selection to accomplish. So regardless of what the designer did while making tutorials, we can do anything. So I'm just going to go and drag like this. And the good thing of that is, while you make a tutorial, that even if I dragged, technically, theoretically, I've selected these lines as well, other lines, but they wouldn't allow me to select it. So basically the selection would be just what you do. So when you follow a tutorial, this is good to know, so it's easy. Then it told me to click delete, and again, it tells me to select this, and typically I'll have to go and manually select them like this, or I can just go and drag like this, and the tutorial will automatically adjust what I need. So the goal, what I'm going to do here is we're going to duplicate. If you can read the description, it needs to duplicate this, and it highlights this icon over here, the copy icon, or Command C. And then it tells me go to modify, and I'm going to fill it. So fill it, basically just making it the edges around it. Oops, I have to type in 3 over here, and then just finalize it. Okay, now if you see, I have to deactivate the polygon. So because we're going to work with object selections, and it shows me over here, it highlights what I need to deselect this, and I need to select this. And now it's going to be a little bit of repetitive steps where it tells me to activate edges, and I need to select this, but again, I'll make it quick like this, and then copy, and then it tells me to move to the fillet and 3. So this is going to be just repetitive steps. and then just finalize it. Okay, now I need to click on this to activate it again. Deactivate, click here, and I'll show you the next time that actually you can activate it a different way as well. But now again, let me select this, and then I'm going to make a copy. So this basically is creating these cushions, but it creates the different profiles. We take the original profile and just copy them to make different objects. But now I can see why they decided to use round objects. I explained over here why it's better to use round objects. This is just a matter of design. I'm not going to comment now design. You can just read the descriptions. But this is how the designer decided to do this. And now it tells me to activate edge selection, or actually deactivate. I wanted to actually show you can click in the grid to do it. I forgot. So now I have to go to edge selection to select, and I have to select this. And now I have to copy it again. And now it's just repetitive patterns. Okay, so it's round objects. And as you see, once the value is there, you don't have to change anything. You just can finalize it, and that's it. You can also have click the preview button. It will be the same idea. It doesn't really matter. So now I have to it's activated. Let me see. Click in the grid. This is what I wanted to show you. See, I don't. When it comes to selections or these things activations, clicking on the grid or using marquee, these things are more flexible. You don't always have to do exactly as they said. This is helpful. In this case, it doesn't matter if you click here or click in the grid. But when you have a lot of faces to deselect, usually this is not the case in this tutorial, but in other tutorials, you can just click in the grid to deselect. You don't have to follow this because it's optional how you can do it. Now I deselect this. Now it tells me to profile -1 to select it, and I mean _1, click profile underscore 4. So it's this one to select. Not this one. I'm sorry. It's this one. It's highlighted. Okay, I have to click on this one. And I have to, okay, yeah, this all I have to click on. And now I have to click on, okay, so I guess we finished with all of these copies. And you can go in general, you can go rename it, but actually I'm not sure if this will allow me to rename a tutorial. No, it wouldn't. Okay, you cannot do it because this will break the tutorial. So the tutorial, the designer didn't do it, so I cannot do it while in the flow and tutorial. So once it's selected, now we're going to start building the basic object itself. And this is what this is using it is Fill Polygon, which is basically, I want to show you what I showed you before. This tells me click to finalize, but actually it doesn't make a difference. You can first preview and then click finalize. It didn't change the step because this is kind of optional. Okay, so once I have this done, now you can see what it tells me to do is go to the modify and add thickness. So there's different ways you can add thickness to something to build it up. You can use extrusion, but then you're going to have to fill the bottom, or you can use just add thickness. In this case, it uses add thickness, and you create 30 and so on. So now you see this is highlighted. This, I think I said it in the beginning, that SelfCAD is working in highlights. This is already using a different type of highlight. Eventually, all of these highlights will be much more obvious and better, but still, you know, working on this stuff. I'm sorry. So this is where we have a polygon selection, and it tells me to select this. So I want to go and explain for a second what this is. So once I select it, I wouldn't be able to undo it because the step will move to the next step. But technically, a polygon is the entire thing that is flat, whereas a face, if you go to the face mode, it selects like each face individually. If you see these lines, like this triangle over here, or this short, you know, triangle, this triangle, they're all different faces. You have a lot of faces on top, whereas polygon selects the entire thing. Now, in real, not when you work with, if I click now over here, it will select just what's highlighted. It highlights the green you need to select, because as I said, it's kind of a liberal approach to allowing selection. But in reality, the way the designer has done it has gone to this advanced setting and entered something part selection. And part selection is something that allows selecting different parts. You can see now it keeps on highlighting different parts, and this basically selected these as different parts, because otherwise it will select the entire thing at once. So I could have selected, just click on the entire polygon without opening this, and it would have worked, just because the same way I can drag marquee selection, select everything. But just to teach in the reality, in real design, you'll have to use part selection to make a selection like this, or you have to use face selection and kind of pick these faces, which are quite a lot of faces. Especially here, you have a lot of tiny faces on this rounded arc. Okay, so now with that said, it tells me go to extrusion. In this case, this already has some bottom of the faces, so actually extrusion isn't for a mesh. The adding thickness is something else. On a profile, these tools are all reusable. So when it comes to a profile, you use add thickness to adding a thickness to it. I mean, once you have a simple plane, I'm sorry, after fill polygons, we have a simple plane, you add thickness, and extrusion will need to add the bottom plane. But when it comes to a mesh, add thickness is something else, kind of just making it manifold if you have a hole, and you're adding like a wall thickness, something like that. But if you like to extend a geometry using extrusion, and this is similar to any software, basically, it's not something special. But that's basically how it goes, and now you finalize it. So now I can deselect again. It tells me to click here, or I can just click on the grid, doesn't matter. I can just actually tells, yeah, looks like I did have to deselect, and I had to click over here. Okay, now it shows me over here what I need to select and deselect. It highlights me everything that I need to do, and now what I do is it tells me to move it, and I have to move the Y to 37, and you can see this will explain the details what needs to be done. But now while this tool is open, it tells me to change the selection, so I have to click on profile, this one on _3 to deselect, and you see it was actually an issue with the highlight. It didn't highlight it. Once I clicked on this is highlighted already to deselect. So again, there's some still, it's a new feature. It's as expected. There's still some minor issues, but it's overall it's easy to follow already. So now what's going to happen is we're going to go back to the drawing, as you can see, and we're going to use a different tool. Instead of using Fill Polygon like before, we use a different tool how to create this. So this is going to do something minimal angle step size, which allows to draw straight lines. The first thing we draw, like the outline of the sofa, the first part, we use the snap to minimum to the grid snap side, so it kind of snapped to these grid points. Now it uses a different thing, which is just a minimum angle, which simply allows you straight lines, because this doesn't matter where you position it. When you want to position a specific location, you change the grid settings from workspace settings, how big each box is, and then you kind of align it to points on the grid. But when you want to simply draw a straight line, it doesn't matter where it's located. The easiest way is just using minimum step size. Just as a side note, there's something to override. Sometimes if you want to snap to something, and if you make a minimum angle step size or a minimum step size, let's say if I would activate this, and if you snap it, it's still smaller, but it snaps. That's what this override will allow you to snap to something, even if it doesn't follow the other conditions from over here. But nevertheless, now it tells me to do something else, to choose a different plane. So we kind of use the drawing needs to have a plane. We draw on the floor, and now I'll have to go over again here to the plane settings, and I need to choose a different plane because we're going to draw on the side. And once I do this, it tells me to go to adding actually the same line is already activated. By default, when you open the tool, line is activated. It tells me just to, before that, I'm sorry, it goes to another setting over here, profile settings, and make a new profile. Because you can see over here, this is selected and this is selected. So there's a few ways actually you can make a new profile. You can just deselect everything, it will automatically make a new profile, or you can click over here. Usually you have, a list of profiles that you want to continue drawing to a certain profile, or you can click over here to make a new profile. Just as a side note, in case you drew something that doesn't belong to the profile and you want to change it, you can always use in the utilities to select the parts that you want to split off, or if you want to combine something, you can use the merge objects. But the simplest way is to do it correct the first time. So we make a new profile, and now it tells me we have this line activated, but we want to have more details so we can later bend it. If something is just straight, you can't bend it. Once you do that, you can see we have here a highlighted point, which is this point over here, and I click on it, and it tells me to enter a value. So I type in the value of 15, and once I type in the value, this kind of locks it in that wherever I move it, this is like the finite size of this line, and now it tells me where to click to finalize the line. Now it tells me to click escape to finalize the line. I actually think this was an extra step, because you can just click X to close the drawing, and that will stop it also. But nevertheless, it tells me to press escape. Maybe you shouldn't mistakenly draw the line further, so escape is actually maybe needed. But now we can see what happened here. We drew a simple line. It just has more details. You can't see it because it's not activated these different modes. But it looks like a simple line, but we added 10 segments. Because we added 10 segments, we can bend it. Again, these tools are all reusable. Use it for a mesh or for lines. And it tells me to move it using the highlighted gizmo. Now, it's important to use a highlighted gizmo because it's asymmetric, meaning it doesn't bend on both sides, it's just on one side. So these are kind of symmetrical, and that's something else, but it's kind of simple. So I need to select this yellow part, and I need to move it while I see it's 1. So actually, I did it, the X was 1, so now I can close it. And you can see it's no longer highlighted, it stays red. Now, this doesn't stay 1, because when it comes to these transformations, those are not a value that is an absolute value, kind of like position. If the position was 20, you move it to 40, you will see X was 20 before and now it's 40. Just for an example. But this is not the case when it comes to these deformations, because there's no real value. It's just a relative term. I'm losing it relatively by 1. So while I moved it, I saw it move to 1, but then it becomes back to 0, because it's not like we have a value of how much this is bended and how you calculate that. But as you can see, this is bended, and all this is doing, this gives me a shape that I'm going to use now to follow these other profiles that we made all of these repetitive steps copies. So now it tells me this is already selected. In general, the tool we're going to use now is a tool that is called Follow Path. You see in a minute. The logic is that you always select what you want to follow. So kind of we tell the computer, take this line and follow it along something else that I'm going to select, which in this case is this profile. And let's see what it is. So you can see this profile is already selected. I just selected it, so it got highlighted along with this one. So these two are highlighted. Now I go to Follow Path, and I just have to click to finalize. And what happened is it took the shape. You can see that this kind of represents the same shape from this, and this basically followed this along. So it created the outline, but it didn't fill the inside, because this was not a closed path. It created just the outline. So in order to close this, we go back to the same tool we used before, Fill Polygon. We used it before to fill a profile, but now we have selected a mesh. The mesh is not manifold. It doesn't, it's just an outline. Still, this will do the same trick, because these tools are reusable. And now we see we got kind of the first cushion, but it tells me to adjust it, to scale it, and I want me to adjust it key proportion. So we're going to adjust it just in one axis, but I need them to adjust in each of the axes. So if I make this to 88, it scaled it everything proportionally, and I can close this. And now it's going to be just repetitive steps. I deselect this, I select again first the line that I want to follow, and I select the next profile I want to follow, and I do the follow path, I close it, and then I do the fill polygon, and I finalize it, and then I do the scale again and again to keep proportion. In reality, sorry, this is another thing that I want to say, that a lot of these tools settings, I don't remember if keep proportion is one of them, but in general, a lot of these settings are being saved on your computer. If you use it once, especially in the drawing settings like snap or all these type of stuff, are being stored while you are in the session. Maybe if you reload the computer next time, it's not stored. I don't remember exactly. But a lot of the things are being stored, but in the tutorial kind of tells you every time what to do. So things that would usually be stored, you have to do it kind of repetitively over here. But again, I don't remember this is actually the case with this, with key proportion. So probably not actually, it wouldn't make sense. But anyways, I have to deselect this, same repetitive steps, select this, and I have to select this. And this is just repetitive steps. And you can see it already shows this ... That's kind of repetitive. I finalize, and you can guess what's next, the fill polygon, and then you can guess the next, the scale. And over here would be the step key proportion, and then it would be 69. Okay, and I'll close it. Now again, I deselect, and we're just gonna follow, you see, create all of the profiles we're going to create. Where's the profile select now? Oh, we just rotate. So actually it's no longer repetitive. Now we're going to rotate this, because this is something very interesting. When you do this mesh, you tell it to follow, but it needs to know where to follow. So if you want to follow it in a different direction, you actually have to rotate this mesh. So this is kind of where it comes in a little bit understanding of how you want this geometry to follow. So I had to follow it, rotate it, and close it. And now I can select the second mesh, because otherwise it wouldn't work. So after rotation, this will work. So I didn't put attention exactly why the rotation, which direction it was, but obviously the designer tested it, and it's just a matter of always how you position it. The object will follow. It depends also where it's positioned on the grid, because it starts, always in these functions, starts from the center and it goes either clockwise or counterclockwise. And if this is in this side of the grid, it will kind of follow it like this. I think counterclockwise. I'm not sure, I think so. And if it would be, it depends which direction you're doing it. Actually, I may be blabbling here. I have to test it myself. But nevertheless, now it will be repetitive, the same function again. Just stopped it for a rotation in the middle. And now it will be scale again, and again set key proportion and 69. And then it tells me to, let's see, to select my mesh 3. So let's see this one. So this here is actually an issue where it didn't highlight it. So again, may still be some issue sometimes. And it has to turn off the key proportion, and I have to move it using the set X. So this is basically highlighted, looks like. Okay, so it tells me actually you move everything, but that's not true. It's just what the finite values will be, but you only move this one, and this is the highlighted, which is the Y is 35.61. So I'm going to move it 35.61, and it snaps it, so it makes it easy. In reality, you have this settings over here, minimum step size, and if you want to move such a perfect number, 35.61, you will have to reduce the step size less than 1 and play it or type in. But again, these tutorials are kind of just make it easy to follow, so it kind of snapped it to this value. But yeah, so that's basically what it is. Now it tells me mesh 4, select. Again, this is not highlighted, so again, these still may have these some issues, but now it tells me actually to deselect. You can read it, now that's not working, it's just the highlights looks like are not perfect yet. And now it tells me to copy this. So actually it created this stuff over here, and it's going to copy now, so we don't have to keep repeating ourselves. And we set Z to 55, and now I have to deselect, let's say mesh 5 and 4. So let's see, oops. I have to select, actually select these two, so 5 and 4. Looks like once I select one, it highlights other. I'm sorry, it keeps on popping up my stuff here. Okay, but let's see what we do over here. Now I'm going to copy these two, and it's going to move it over to make a rotation to 90 degree rotation, and now it's going to move it over and position it over here to minus 107, and move the X to 44. Okay, so we're done with this and closing it. Now it's going to deselect all of these and selecting all of these profiles here, which I left out here, all of these profiles. And now it highlights this, it tells me to go to hide them away, and congratulations, we're completed. So this basically is the tutorial. So if you see with me talking with everything, it's less than half an hour creating this perfect sofa, and you learned a lot from this. So basically this shows how you can use sketching with a combination of edit details and fill polygons and follow pad and those type of tools. I would say it's a good idea to look at the tool which is this tool, Extrusion. It creates this house. This is another tool which is showing a different approach, which is using extrusion approach. So it kind of takes an existing mesh, kind of like a cube or something like that, and thins it out, whatever, and then it creates the steps by using extrusion. A totally different approach, but it's good to learn because a lot of times you can do this. And we will soon post another tutorial which will use more about sketching a different approach to create a house. And actually I think 2 other tutorials are in works similar. So there's a lot of different approaches to do these things, but something like this, creating all of these rounded pieces, and one thing is important to note, that SelfCAD is actually focusing a lot on manifold geometry. So we use usually the approach of something that can later be printed and so on, unlike many other software which is just the visuals, but it may not be manifold. In SelfCAD, actually, you're getting a perfectly manifold geometry, so which is good for anything, including rendering and for further use, many other stuff. Okay, thanks for watching, and I hope you try it yourself. Have a great day. Bye.